The Florida State Seminoles have entered a 2-week recruiting window where they have the ability to catch back up from a talent perspective with the likes of the Clemson Tigers, Miami Hurricanes, Florida Gators, and other prominent programs. The visit list is there. Now, will Mike Norvell and his staff get it done?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet comes out a winner. We're going to be talking about the next 2 weeks. That is the primary theme for today's show. The official visits, the players that are committed, the players that could be committed, the big battles against Miami, against Florida, Georgia, and other programs. And we're also going to talk about a prospect who's been predicted by multiple recruiting analysts to end up at Florida State, a South Floridian. We're also going to talk a little bit about what happens with the quarterback position. Everything involved here today is recruiting. And if you take nothing else away from this podcast note, the next 2 weeks are really the ball game for not just this recruiting class, but for Florida State's short-term future, meaning like the next 2-3 years. They've got a big hole to get themselves out of. And if it does not happen in this next 2 weeks, it's going to be a really, really tough climb. They have the right people coming in for the official visits. There's no doubt. They've got an elite official visit list over the next couple of weeks. 100%. Can they get it done? We're going to talk about that all throughout the show. So first player to discuss to help them get out of that deficit is Brandon Bennett, American Heritage High School wide receiver. He's probably going to play slot, but he might move outside. He's a guy that I think could play either potentially. Most important thing about Bennett, and there is just no way around it, he can absolutely fly. He ran 10.4 and change as a sophomore in high school. Yes, I said as a sophomore. When you're that fast at that age, it's a little bit different. Now, Mr. Brandon Bennett is somebody that has been recruited by numerous programs, but he did just get rid of his official visit to the University of Florida. American Heritage, South Florida program. Sertan, ironically, was the head coach there at one point. But that's a program that Florida, Miami, Florida State, automatic stops. Same for Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State. The elite programs recruit there. Getting a kid out of there, again, is not going to hurt Florida State's chances. Somebody from On3, somebody from 24/7, et cetera. There's multiple guys. And I'd heard rumblings about it a few weeks back that this could be the landing spot, but it wasn't like pushed on me or anything. His official visit to Florida State, good, by all accounts. But he didn't commit yet. So I'm just going to pose this as a question in general. And he could commit 5 minutes after I start this podcast too. That would be my luck. But here's a question for you. If you really like Florida State, and it's a South Florida kid, that wouldn't be shocking. The visit goes really well. But you hold off. What would you say as a Florida State fan would be the number one reason, doesn't have to be Brandon Bennett, it could be anybody, that they don't immediately pull the trigger? This is something that I asked myself earlier today. And I don't really have a single answer. It's convoluted. But if you had any guess or guesses, please comment down below on the YouTube page. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if nothing else, just look at it from a perspective of, it seems like this is a very common trend where they're really close, but at least with Bennett, by the way, predictions are in. My guess is they're trending really hard and something will come of this within the week, if not even today. That's kind of the norm with recruiting. But why haven't more kids that have reached this point, similar again to Brandon Bennett, went ahead and punched their ticket with Florida State? They're in the top 3 for numerous kids. Why haven't more pledged to the Noles? There's playing time available. It's still a national program. I know they had a bad year last year. And if you want to throw that out there, oh, it's just because of last season, that's viable. But it is very interesting. I think that Florida State has to get past that. If that's what it is, I'm not saying I have the answer because I don't, but there's just no shortcut here. They have to beat Florida and they have to beat Miami directly, head to head in recruiting this year. They're behind right now, but again, the official visit list, they could certainly end up ahead. I don't know what's going to happen, and that's why this is so fascinating. And again, the next 2 weeks are going to tell us that. Let's go through the long list of players here that I have written down, notes. This is really a continuation from yesterday on this different things that I've heard, continuation of thoughts, and like, does Florida State have a shot at any of these kids? The first one is a little bit surprising to me in a good way. Jay Lamar. I read about him today on War Chant, and it was just a reminder, hey, this is a kid in a very similar situation to Chroma from last year. He was from Lee County. Jay Lamar is at Colquitt County, program not that far away. Big-bodied guy, plays at a prominent high school football program in Central Georgia. Do you have the ability to get him? Yeah. Does he like Florida State? Yes. His comments, go check it out on War Chant. He's done some interviews. But Jay Lamar really likes Florida State. All the things that I'd been told, though, this is prior to me reading the interview, whether it was going to be the Clemson or Georgia, depending on who you talk to, it was one of those two. I hadn't heard any other school. And he's got an offer from pretty much everybody in the country. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, really physical back, tremendous after contact ability to stay up. He's a natural running back. But I hadn't heard Florida State. This is why visits matter. And it's also, again, why I say the next 2 weeks matter so much for Florida State. You're getting them on campus. I don't care if you're trailing by a mile. In perceptionally, Florida State didn't have a chance at Jay Lamar. I don't know the kid on a personal level, so I didn't have anything to add. But this is why it matters. Florida State, for as long as I have followed football, has been as good or better than any college football program at flipping the script in a recruitment. They could have been fourth, they could have been fifth, they could have been sixth, whether it was an unofficial visit, official visit, whatever it may have been during the Bowden era, through the Jimbo Fisher era, and even through some of the guys that didn't make it at Florida State. There have been players that have come here and just loved it. Let's see who else it could be. Maybe it's Jay Lamar. Anything's possible. And to that point, another running back. I've been told he's going to Florida. He's going to Florida. He's going to Florida. Maybe he will, but Carson Baker out of Langston Hughes High School, just outside of Atlanta, he had tremendous things to say about Florida State, again, based on his official visit to Tallahassee. That's all you can ask for at this point. Like, he thought he was going to Florida is what I was told. Like, it's done deal, all that. And I'm like, okay, well, then why is he taking a visit? That was my reply to my buddy that told me that. And this is why recruiting is so wild. We're dealing with teenagers. Carson Baker is a kid that can fly. He'd be one of the fastest players on Florida State's roster from day one. Like, he has that kind of speed, similar to Brandon Bennett, but he's darn near 200 pounds. That's the kind of speed you don't normally see from any program. So he's an elite recruit, Ohio State, Georgia, you name it, they've offered. This is a kid that visited, really liked it. Again, does Florida State get over the top? At some point, there's just no way around it. They got to make that commitment to Florida State and nothing else, by the way. When I say commitment, unless I note otherwise here today, it means you're committed and you shut it down. That's another problem we're going to talk about on and off for probably the rest of the summer, because a lot of FSU's commits, they're still looking around. So I don't really know how to gauge their commitment list, but can they get a couple of these elite guys to do that? Because if they do, it changes the trajectory of the 26 class. And it also changes the trajectory of Mike Norvell's tenure. They need recruiting momentum. This next 2 weeks probably going to be a pretty good indicator of what's going to happen. Now for a kid that I didn't know as much about, and I honestly didn't have much hope that Florida State would get any real shot here. Daniel Odom. He visited Florida State from St. John Bosco, just outside of LA, conservatively, a national top 10 program, elite program. Oklahoma's got his commitment. But he says Florida State's definitely his top 3 or 4 now. He's been to campus before, gets the official visit, goes well. Now we're in a situation where what can they do to get him over the top? It's not like Oklahoma set the world on fire last year. Let's cut to the chase here. They sucked. I saw them play. They sucked. So I know Florida State wasn't any good either, but that's not going to be the reason he's going to Oklahoma. So what can Florida State do to get over the top there? These are just 3 of the recruitments where they made headway with official visits, and there are a whole bunch more. We'll go over more of them here in just a second, but I wanted to give a baseline for people to understand that a Florida State official visit can change the trajectory really, really quick. And once one kid commits, it can be a domino effect. When we continue on here on Locked On Seminoles, we got some more good news to talk about. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. The NBA playoffs are rolling along, and we are to the NBA Finals. Every night delivers major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, and much more. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in on the game before tip-off and live, player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and a lot of different ways for you to have fun and play smart to win big. So, which player or players do you think Oklahoma City is going to have to come out and play really well Game 3 in Indy Wednesday night? Maybe you got something you want to talk about regarding MLB. We're getting close to the midway point of the season. Some guys starting to trend there too for possible MVP, for Cy Young, etc. A lot of things to look at. If you are new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Florida State football is trending in the right direction with their recruiting efforts in terms of the official visits, in terms of the players they're bringing on campus and wowing them. And it's a lot of fun to talk about. First guy here, because I'm the one running this podcast, I can tell you I really enjoy that a lot more than they missed on everybody. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. And as I go through this podcast here in Locked On Seminoles, as well as my Locked On the Portal show, I do recruiting at least 1 or 2 shows every day, 7 days a week on it right now. Make sure you check out Locked On the Portal. I do want to make a note. You're not going to get everybody. Johnny Jones, one of the kids that Florida State was recruiting, offensive tackle out of Berkeley Prep in Tampa, is committed to UCLA. Kind of random. Big-bodied offensive tackle is going to the Bruins. Just thought I would mention it. But the good news on the offensive line, I haven't heard anything to disrupt this. I'd heard yesterday the FSU visit was really good. But let's see what happens with Syracuse. He's going to visit there. He's got a Purdue visit. We'll see. He's an in-state kid that's been committed to Syracuse forever, which is shocking. He's from Melbourne Central Catholic. But we'll see. That's a player that they could really use. FSU made up a lot of ground, again, on the visit. That's a player they could use. Now for something that many of you ask me about, or I hear from Florida State fans in general on X, that is quarterback recruiting. This is where we get really, really interesting because Warchant put out an article that was really interesting in regards to what happens now. Should they just go all in on Jaden O'Neal? It was an interesting article. It was well written, talking about if Bo Bentley decides to go to LSU, maybe Jaden just sticks with Oklahoma and FSU's sitting there holding the bag. That's plausible. That could be. I just want to give a couple of points here. Number one, it's not like Florida State doesn't have feelers out to guys that myself and even Gene over at Warchant probably doesn't know about. If there's one thing I know about college coaches, they keep a lot of secrets. And yes, they lie a lot too about who they're recruiting. It's just the way of the world. They don't want anybody else knowing what they're doing. There's probably a backup plan nobody in the media knows about. That's my guess. Secondarily, it's not like they haven't reached out to other players before. And for those of you that came in today via YouTube, the thumbnail that I used for the photograph, that is Luke Fahey. That's a kid that they could be in on. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does. They've talked with him before, from what I know. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's somebody else. Luke's a guy that I think they should absolutely recruit. I like him better than some of the other guys they've recruited this year. And I think he's right up there in his own way, although slightly different kind of player than what you would see with the Landon Duckworth, etc. Fahey is from Mission Viejo, California, just outside of LA. He's won a state championship as a sophomore as a quarterback. That's really hard to do. Plays at a program, has a bunch of D1 kids, so that doesn't hurt. And he's a guy that just fits in wherever he goes. Everybody likes him. When your quarterback is a friendly guy that's media savvy, that is really easy to get along with, that's usually a win. And oh yes, he is mobile. He's got an arm and he's extremely accurate. He plays for California Power 7-on-7. That's my vote for what direction they should go. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Whether or not Mike Norvell and the rest of the Florida State staff go in their own direction, maybe they just roll the dice with Jaden O'Neal, I have no idea. But let it be known that Florida State could make a lot of headway if they got somebody like Fahey, who, by the way, recently got an Ohio State official visit set up. He's really good, folks. So let's see what happens. But there's a long way to go with quarterback recruiting. I don't look at it quite the same way that Warchant does in regards, I forget which person wrote that particular article, but it was good. It was a good article again. But I think there's more time with quarterback recruiting than what some think. And despite my overall theme today for the 2-week window, I wouldn't worry about it quite that much. We'll get into that more here in just a minute. Let's talk about a couple other guys that are visiting. Speaking of California, James Carrington, defensive lineman out of Crane Lutheran in Irvine, just outside of LA. He's got Arkansas starting today. He's got Florida State coming up in a few days and Nebraska to finish out his official visit list. Defensive lineman, 6'2", 250, 240, somewhere in there. They need more edge rushers. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. He would be a nice addition. Evan Jacobson. This is something I didn't like to see. Tight end. He's a kid, I believe he's out of Iowa. He is no longer going to be visiting Florida State. Just wanted to mention it. I picked that up along the way. Really good player. So Florida State's got to get a couple tight ends in this class, in my opinion. I'm curious to see what direction they go. 2027 recruit, as I mentioned yesterday, not going to Florida State anymore. Jalen Scott, he was prior, committed to the Noles. He has flipped his commitment from FSU to Auburn. He was at Williamson High School in Mobile. Not really shocking. The fact that Florida State even got him to commit early is probably the more surprising thing to me. Now I just want to go through a couple of recruiting thoughts. Here are some of the questions I have that could go any which direction. All right. I don't have answers to these, but we'll see. Will Florida State get a quarterback committed this summer? I think that's debatable. If I had to guess, I'd say 50-50, but debatable. Tight end recruiting, same kind of question. Does Florida State get at least one tight end committed from the group they're getting ready to bring in? Or is there somebody else, maybe a junior college player, something like that? Landon is going to be a 3-and-out guy. Pretty safe with that. Maybe Amari as well. Therefore, you got to get at least one stud in this class, if not two, that are all-around tight ends. They set the bar. I mean, they may never really get an Amari Landon kind of combination at tight end again. We'll see how that goes, but that would be a huge get to find a big-time tight end that can come in addition to what they have. They got 3 good young players, but, excuse me, they may not have one, if not both of them, after the 26th season. You got to be ready to restock. Elite pass rushers. Talk about this quite a bit on the show. Got some guys visiting, including they're still trying to talk, from what I've heard, with Cameron Wilson from South Florida. He's one of the kids that's really good. I think he's at Southridge, if I remember correctly. Really good player. He's committed to Syracuse. Nebraska's making a run at him. Florida State has not made up ground to the point where I feel good there, but there are several other guys too. The next 2 weeks, at least one pass rusher here coming up soon. They need a pure go-get-'em pass rusher to commit. They got the guys coming in. Now you got to make it happen. Offensive tackle. Not only do they need a couple, bare minimum, one of the tackles they end up taking in this class has to be elite. Aaron Thomas, to me, is as important a recruit on the offensive side as there is. His dad's Eric Thomas, was the starting center, I believe, on Florida State's 99 team. Yeah, that's the same one that won the national title. He's got Florida State fans throughout his family. It would be important, really important, to get him in the fold. Now, you got Texas A&M, Ohio State, and a bunch of other programs still coming after him. But if you lose legacy recruits like that, that's pretty rough. We come back, I got a few more questions and some good news, and maybe even if we've got time, a little bit more about the House settlement. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Let's talk a little more good news in time for today's show. Florida State's official visit list. I've pretty much made it clear, but I wanted to really hit this point. If nothing else that the Florida State staff has done in a positive direction since last year is the ability to get official visits not only lined up, they're really good. They did it in a really timely fashion. Like I spoke to John Garcia Jr. from Rivals the other day. He said they do a heck of a job of getting all the official visits. I'm like, yeah, John, you are correct. They absolutely do. And that's probably going to pay dividends. Like everybody else, I'm trying to figure, okay, which guy's most likely to commit? But right now, I would say the biggest thing is Florida State is in a scenario where they're waiting for just that one or two guys to get the ball rolling. If I had to guess, I'd say 7, 8 guys are not all that far off from being Florida State commits. But I just don't know what that, as I mentioned earlier, I just don't know what that point is that gets them over the top. Maybe Brandon Bennett's the icebreaker, the wide receiver I mentioned earlier from American Heritage. It's possible. If Bennett commits, if Brandon Bennett commits, is that the icebreaker? That's the question of the day. When is this run going to happen for Florida State recruiting? Does it begin this week? Maybe early next week after the big official visit list? When is Florida State's recruiting run going to take place? Now, with that being stated, one of the reasons for this, and I will happily admit that I didn't see this coming. It's not based on his history, but Norvell has been far more involved over the last, let's say, 5-6 months, since January 1st. Let's just use an easy date. Whether you're seeing him with recruits out in the parking lot, hearing more about him being involved during the official visits, whatever it's been, it's consistent. I've heard that from people in the recruiting industry. The articles show it. The photographs show it. The mentions on social media. That's all positive for Florida State. Still got to get the commitments, but if you didn't do that stuff, you had no chance at the commitments. Thumbs up. Now, the last part, and this is a nostalgia thing for me and for older Florida State fans, they'll love this. The one thing that always shocked me about Bowden's teams, and even to some degree, you could say the same thing about Jimbo. They went in and they recruited the best players. Didn't care if they were from the state of Washington, state of Texas, state of Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., North Carolina, Atlanta, you name it. They would get their core out of Florida and Georgia. That didn't really ever change. But in that 5 to 8 range, 5 to 8 players in every recruiting class, they could have been from anywhere, especially D linemen, corners, quarterbacks. Makes sense. Those are pivotal spots. They got most of their big guys, offensive tackles, et cetera, down south. Not that they got all of them, but the vast majority. But those spots like corner, et cetera, they might go to a different state than you're used to try and get somebody. They might go to Virginia. They might go to Texas. Whatever they thought was going to get them over the top. They really did it for defensive linemen, North Carolina, D.C., et cetera. It was smart. This recruiting class, the way it's been set up so far with the official visit list, they're battling Miami, Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M, LSU, more than they have the last few years. If you are not in those battles with those schools, zero chance that you're eventually going to beat them on the actual gridiron. Your institutional peers, the programs I just mentioned, throw in a Penn State, throw in a Southern Cal, throw in an Oklahoma, throw in a Michigan. You have to beat them in recruiting first. About 80% of college football is recruiting after you get your head coach. That's a caveat that I should mention more often. If Norvell thinks he's that guy, if he really wants to stick around, if he's really invested, he's got to figure out a way to get some of those elite recruits. They're in position. They're in position. Now can you get it done? I'm really fascinated the next 2 weeks because you could argue nationally that there is no program with a bigger question mark in front of it than the Florida State Seminoles. It's there for the taking. It's ripe for the taking. All these elite players coming in, just the Florida talent coming in. It's there. Now can they get it done? To that point, I want to close out on this, and this is a massive issue. I might really dive into this, might even make it the first point tomorrow to go into more detail. But Bud Elliott's talked about this. Of course, Bud's a lawyer on the Cover 3 podcast, etc. He has the same opinion as the same people that I've spoken with in regards to lawyers and the new House settlement. Here's what I mean. There's no shortcut here. It's very convoluted. My apologies, but welcome to politics and college football. The biggest question is twofold. It's the clearinghouse and quote unquote, any NIL deal through, like, for instance, Auburn's is called On to Victory. Everybody's got an NIL collect, whatever it's called. Battles End at Florida State. All of them have something. Anything that's not from the $20.5 million inside the institution, if that deal for a player, could be a volleyball player, football, anything, if that deal is over $600, it has to go through the clearinghouse. And here's the thing. Part of that is, and I don't know exactly who these people will be, they are going to determine, quote unquote, I don't say how you can do this, but fair market value for a player's name, image, and likeness. So if the local BMW dealership wanted to sponsor somebody for Florida State or Florida, Georgia, whatever, that's cool, but you got to outline it. And if they flag it because, oh, that's more money than that individual's worth, that women's basketball player's worth, or that tennis players, whatever, doesn't matter the sport. Obviously, football is the mainstay here, but it's across the board. The deal's no good. Two problems with that. Number one, I haven't spoken to a single person that's a lawyer that says this isn't going to get sued. The only argument that I've had is from the people I've spoken with, again, they're all lawyers. It's a matter of when, not if. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to guess the timelines, but impending lawsuits definitely are coming. Secondarily, I posed this with a buddy of mine, Zach Blackerby. I was on Locked on Auburn the other day. I said, here's the deal. Kids looking, let's use Devin Carter. Committed to Florida State, flipped to Auburn, still looking at Florida State. This could be a critical thing. Dad's a Florida State legacy. Dexter Carter played, I think it was 86 to 90 at Florida State, and then played in the NFL for the Niners, etc. Really great player. If the NIL package at Auburn, let's say it's matched by Florida State, and they tack on, and I'm just totally throwing out randomness here, $100,000 more. If that NIL package is partially from Battle's End, let's say part of it is outside the athletic department. The reason he was, okay, I'm going to flip. Once this is approved, we're good. I'm going to Florida State. And you could apply this to any school, but the first time, and I mean literally the first time that a recruit's NIL package from that NIL collective is, I don't care if it's legit or not, the first time it happens, the bag man will be back in business. Not that he was ever completely out of business, but just they have to justify with these NIL deals what a player is worth. There is no way on God's green earth you're going to tell extremely powerful people with a lot of money that they can't spend the money where they want to spend it. Fair, unfair, legal, unlegal, zero shot. And you're not going to tell me that parents, kids, high school coaches, trainers, etc., aren't going to take bags of cash. So how does that work out for Florida State and all these other schools? And which other programs are going to be in that same situation where they lose a recruit because a deal got flagged? That's coming. Not saying it'll be Florida State, because I think it could be very random, but it could just be some basic literature that they didn't like how it was worded. They flag it, and the kid's tired of dealing with it. You know what? I'm just going to stick with this school or that school, or I'm just going to stay home. The first time a team, it could just be their opinion that they lost a recruit because of that clearinghouse, the bag man coming. They're going to just skip it. They're just going to put some really modest stuff in there, and they're just going to pay kids cash. So this clearinghouse is a complete and utter joke. Just wanted to say that. You all can take that however you want, but comment down below if you have something to say and if you've read something different. But that's my take on it, and we'll dive in more tomorrow and throughout the week. But This is a big deal because July 1st, it goes into effect for Florida State and every other school. This is the part outside, keywords here, outside the $20.5 million that is allotted to an athletic department. I'm guessing 15 to 17 million for each truly major college football program. Their athletic department's going to say, here you go. Georgia, Florida State, Miami, Ohio State, those kind of programs. So there'll be plenty of money, but that's not enough to win a title. If your goal is to win it, your outside venture, meaning your collective, is pivotal. If they're getting deals turned down, you have zero shot to win a national title. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Hit that like button, notification bell, subscribe to this podcast, and comment. Truly appreciate it. We will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.